This episode has taken a long time to come to fruition. It's pretty rare that there is an 18-month gap between my first look at a product and my actual review. But the circumstances around the release of the Menura MDMX are pretty special, and thankfully it turns out, so is the mixer. Welcome to Beatsource Tech, my name is Mojaxx, and in this episode we're going all modular. When I first looked at the MDMX back in May of 2023, it was completely in prototype form. It barely worked at all, and the company clearly hadn't worked out their shipping strategy. Around half of the modules they sent me turned up having been damaged in transit. I could still see the potential of the product though, despite the issues at the time, and so I did make a video about the mixer anyway, pointing viewers to their Kickstarter crowdfunding page, with the caveat that I wasn't necessarily recommending that anyone back it. I've always been a bit wary of that funding model. As you can see, in this case Menura have indeed delivered, and the 30 plus backers of the project did receive their mixer as promised. But I can tell you with 100% certainty that the MDMX represents the one and only time I will cover a crowdfunded product on this channel. Not because of the MDMX, but because I then backed a video product last year myself, and the experience was horrible, with massive delays and poor communication from the company involved. So you won't see any more crowdfunding content from me. The MDMX did take a while to get made, but it started shipping a few months ago, and I'm happy to report that the final product is actually far superior to the early prototype. The concept hasn't changed. It's a mixer built around the same case each time, but with slots for different modules which can be configured in countless different ways. There's a configurator page on their site, and that gives you 3 example presets, which I think is illustrative of the overall cost of assembling an MDMX, with the disco/house, techno and Urei presets all costing around €2,700, which translates to roughly $2,800 in the US at the time of making this video. That pricing definitely puts the MDMX into the higher tiers of mixer pricing, even on the more boutique side of the market. But the beauty of the modular concept is that you aren't just buying a mixer in its final forever form. If you need it to do something else or work in a different way, you can just swap out modules to achieve that rather than having to buy a whole new mixer. So to break down the cost further, the case, which is always needed, is €750. Then for section 1 you'll need 4 input modules, which are typically €170 each. Section 2 is the channel insert, typically some kind of EQ, and those are €190, but you only need 2 as each does a pair of channels. Section 3 is the mixer controls. Again, these are €190, but each one takes care of 2 channels. In section 4, things diversify. You could spec an isolator, which takes up 2 slots and costs €190, or a single filter for the same price and blank a slot off. Or you could have a high pass and a low pass filter, which will cost you €380 altogether. The master controls make up section 5, and both options there cost €190, and then finally you need the output, section 5, which costs €170 or €190 depending on which model you choose. Whilst pricing all this out, I did have a thought. What if somebody was on a tighter budget? Could they leverage that modularity to start off in a more affordable fashion? Well, I checked with Menura and they confirmed that yes, that would work. So in theory, you could start with 2 input modules, a channel insert, a mixer module, plus master and output modules, add a load of blanking plates, and you could be up and running with a simple 2-channel version of the MDMX for under $2,000, then add in extra bits later. Just an idea. Let's talk now about the build quality. On the prototype I played with last year, everything felt just a little too flexy. Whatever they've done with the construction since has made the whole mixer feel a lot more sturdy and solid in hand. I think the redesigned case helps. That now has threaded inserts along the mounting bars, as opposed to the annoying captive nuts on the prototype. The wood panels on the side are mounted magnetically, so can be removed or swapped out if needed, which is a nice touch. The other area where the MDMX feels better now is in the controls. The knobs were always metal and bolted to the faceplate, but the push buttons for queuing etc. on the prototype were horrible, cheap feeling things, and now they are much higher quality, far more in keeping with a production unit at this kind of price. Assembling the mixer from scratch took me about 20 minutes, but that included the extra time needed to select the different modules, as they sent me so many to test. It wasn't a difficult task at all. Everything is cleanly laid out and all the ribbon cables fit nicely where they were supposed to go. Connectivity on the MDMX is on point. On the front you have both sizes of headphone socket, then on the rear are 8 pairs of RCA inputs. Whether those are phono, line or not used at all depends on which input modules you choose. There's a USB-C port, although no module makes use of that yet, it is good to be future-proof. The power supply is an external DC brick with a screw-on connector, which many prefer for sound quality, but regardless of that, it was always going to be this way on the MDMX. Having full mains voltage inside a mixer which actively encourages you to take it apart would never be a wise idea. There is a send and return loop on 1/4-inch jacks, although as with the USB, there are no modules available which leverage that yet. And finally, there is a booth output, also on balanced jacks, and the masters on XLRs. It's worth noting that both output modules also include RCAs for the master and a separate record output on RCAs up on the top panel. So I'm going to run you through the functionality of the MDMX as I have it configured here. Obviously, if you build your own, you could have completely different configurations. And I can't show you everything. You know, if I was to swap out bits and show you all of the parts, we'd be here for hours. We're not going to do that. I'm just going to show you what I've got built here right now. So we have our 4 channels. Over on the left hand side, we actually have a Bluetooth input module, switchable to line as well. And that is currently connected to my phone. And I'm playing through. On this side, we've got like the old school, the retro style 1620-esque setup. So we have a nice smooth rotary with a very gentle curve. Great feel to that as well, weighted beautifully. Then we have a balance control. Now I know, lots of you younger folks will be saying, why do we need a balance control? Well, that's what the Urei had. If you're going to replicate kind of the circuitry and the layout of a 1620, it's what the Urei had, it's going to have a balance control on it. So yeah, it does do its job. Not something I think I would ever use myself even, but it's there, it's part of the tradition of that 1620, so they've kept it here. Then we have these switches for Q on or off. Old school, again, retro style Q switches. Then up above that, now the 1620 didn't have an EQ on it, but here we have a kind of again, retro style EQ in that we've just got 2-band, bass and treble. It's not full kill. It is purely for just kind of shaping the sound. If you're playing like old vinyl and stuff like that, and different pressings from different times have different characteristics, so you may want to just tweak the bass or pull down a bit of treble on some harsh pressings, that kind of stuff. So I really like that. It's very much in keeping with the 1620 kind of style. These are just really for adjusting the sound to make sure everything matches and blends perfectly together. So we've got 2 channels with that setup. Then we move over here and we have a more kind of modern take on it. We have the up faders, the linear faders. Again, they've got a smooth curve to them, which I like, but they are quite loose feeling. They're high quality, but they're not super tight. So you can slam stuff in, which I think if you're a linear fader user, that's more likely to be on your agenda. So I like how quick and easy they are to work with. On this one, we've got slightly more modern Q switches. And then this module here, there is a 3-band EQ, but this is the 4-band EQ, which will appeal to like zone fans and what have you. That's full kill. There's your low. There's your low mid. And there's your high mid. And there's the high. They've all got little detents in the middle, whereas these don't. Over here, these have got the little kind of stops in the middle to lock them into place. But yeah, you can get some really interesting sound happening there. That, yeah, as I say, definitely will appeal to zone fans and what have you. I missed this input up here. So this one is a 1620 input with a phono line switchable input. So you can go between the two with that switch there. This one here, the regular phono line. I'm just running into the line right now. They've all got the same trim controls and the same level meters going around them. And then this one is a line to line, or line and line. So you've got 2 lines on there. So you really can spec, what kind of inputs that you want. On here right now, I've got 4 line inputs, no, 5 line inputs, 2 phono inputs and Bluetooth. So you can have a pretty comprehensive set of inputs on here. Moving on from there, we've got the output module. This is the 1620 one. So it has the analog VU meters. Again, the 1620 didn't actually have any meters on it at all, but here we have some nice retro style analog VU meters. Definitely my preference. I love that kind of more organic feel to those. But this adds on an extra master out on RCAs and a record output also on RCAs with its own adjustable volume level there. Something I really appreciate. Then we've got the 1620 master module. So this one has a simple switch between Q and master. We have a booth output and the house output, which is what it was called on the 1620. They're definitely paying tribute very much to the 1620, especially with these particular 1620 modules. One thing I will say on this one, the headphone volume goes insanely loud, like dangerously loud. I can never really, once I get to 3, that's too much for me. That is, we are talking, and it goes way beyond that. So yeah, I think they might want to limit that maybe. It'll be great for like high impedance headphones or something, but yeah, for me, that goes too loud. I think it's great to have a lot of headphone output volume. It goes too far, that one, for me, absolutely. But the best thing about it, and this is why I wanted to do an actual kind of demo portion of this, I want to talk about these filters. Analog mixers and filters are the bane of my life. They drive me nuts because they're not good, right? There's always an issue with popping of filters. It's just a thing. Like when you turn them on, you turn them off, there's some kind of popping. These ones though, as you can see right here, I can turn them on and off all day because they've got a special circuit which does a really fast crossover between the filtered and the original signal. And what's even better, it doesn't impact the sound. So that's a double whammy, right? You've got no popping and there's like no difference between the sound between turning them on and turning them off. So you can easily get in and out as long as they're turned off, obviously, the filters are off. I think it's fantastic. I really do. I love it. I know the Zone 96, that's got, zero crossing switches and that does it as well, but the original 92 didn't, and all of these more affordable rotaries I look at that have filters don't have this, and I just found, I find those filters to be unusable. This one, it's the dream. And it's a great filter as well. Very high quality, adjustable resonance. You can go for that proper screaming, or a nice, gentle, lower resonant sound. So we've got high pass here, and then over here we've got the low pass. Again, just really good quality, great, nice big knobs to work with. Just really, really great filters all round. And yeah, I didn't realize when I started playing with this thing and started putting the modules together, the thing I would be most hyped about would be the filters, but absolutely I am. They are absolutely top drawer. It's time to talk about the sound of the MDMX. It's absolutely an all-analog device, but for some reason, I guess because of how techy it looks, I wasn't really expecting the kind of analog warmth and drive you get from, say, a boutique rotary, and yet that is absolutely what it delivers. Menura talk a lot about replicating the circuitry of the legendary Urei 1620 in their modules, and although I've never used an original, I did own a 1620 LE for a few years, and I can completely hear where they're coming from. There is definitely a difference in sound between the regular active sim output module and the 1620 one. The 1620 is transformer balanced and gets warmer and more saturated as you crank things harder, whereas the regular one sounds more clean. But the beauty of the MDMX is the choice is yours, even though I know which one I would go for. The 1620 phono preamps are awesome too, really transparent in the high end but without being shrill, and with plenty of warm low end. Again, they're designed to replicate the sound of a Urei very closely. As with the output module, the regular ones have a cleaner, less noisy sound, which some DJs may prefer, but I'm loving the 1620 ones. I had my suspicions that, due to all the extra complications with the way this mixer is made and sold, that the sound would perhaps be compromised a little when compared to other mixers in this price range, but those suspicions were completely unfounded. The MDMX sounds absolutely fantastic, easily competing with the best boutique mixers I've listened to. And for a change, I don't just have to give you only my word on this. Lauren Joel Schaffhausen, who owns a listening bar in Germany and is a well-respected name on the rotary scene, has heard the MDMX and was equally impressed with the sound, and I really trust his judgment on these things. Let's get into the modules I didn't discuss yet and the promised future ones. Firstly, let's go out of my comfort zone and into the world of Eurorack. If you're unfamiliar, as I am, with Eurorack, it is a standard first released in the 1990s, which lets users build analog synthesizers out of different components, from very simple ones to highly complex things which take up entire walls. Clearly, Menura have been inspired by this idea in all aspects of the MDMX, and so it's natural that they've incorporated the ability to use Eurorack effects modules inside the mixer. They sent me their Eurorack breakout channel insert, which brings the signal from each channel to the front panel through the usual TS jacks and powers a Eurorack module with connectors for both 12 and 5 volts. They also included the Meta, an effects module from a company called Oxy. Now, I still don't really understand Eurorack any better, and I'm not personally a big fan of those little jack leads sticking out everywhere, but the way that thing sounds has now got me wanting to investigate that world a little more deeply. I do hope that Menura haven't sent me down a dark path here, but yes, if that is a world you're already familiar with, then there is a huge amount of potential in the MDMX for you. I was a little disappointed that the modules to enable aux send and return aren't available yet. That's definitely something I'd want on a mixer of this kind. And the same goes for the mic/instrument input module too. Before it goes back, I will try and stream on Twitch with the MDMX, but that will be a bit of a faff without being able to connect up a microphone directly. And I am intrigued by the promised crossfader mixer section, which gives you shorter up faders with an assignable crossfader underneath. I will say to Menura now, if you aren't planning on throwing a mini inner fader in that, then well, you should be. The company are also looking to offer powder-coated front panels for the mixer in the coming weeks to allow you to customize things even further, and I'm sure there will be other modules on the way over time. And they are just a small company, so if there's something particular that you need for your sets, then you can reach out to them, and if there's enough interest, I'm sure they'll accommodate almost any idea. One final thing to discuss, the packaging. This time around things were much better. Menura have invested in purpose-built cardboard boxes to ship all the different modules in, and they are largely successful. I had a couple that arrived with a small plastic piece having come loose in the box, but since they sent those parts to me, they now rivet the boards in place inside the boxes, which means that problem should be entirely eliminated. Although you're buying from what is effectively a small startup, the whole experience is now very slick and professional. Overall, I've been incredibly impressed by the MDMX. This isn't the first time we've seen modularity in DJ mixers. Early in my career there were modular models available from Formula Sound, Eckler and Soundcraft amongst others. But it's an idea which doesn't really seem to exist in the market anymore, with the only other option as far as I know being a yet to be released unit from Rodec. And the way that Menura have implemented the modular concept here is very neat, simple and straightforward, but also very flexible. I also like that, although the headline price of assembling an entire mixer is high, individual modules are reasonably priced. So if you fancy, say, switching out the linear faders on a couple of channels for rotaries instead, it will only cost you about €190. Add to that the potential of expanding into areas like Eurorack and who knows where else, and the superb sound quality, and what we have here is a mixer project which may have started off being crowdfunded, but which I believe will absolutely be here for the long term. Excellent stuff. I was concerned about this one. As I've said, I'm fully over covering any crowdfunded products from here on out. But on this occasion, Menura have absolutely delivered what they promised with the MDMX in terms of both quality and functionality. I've never really been quite on board with the hype around modular synthesizers. As much as I like the concept of modularity, the learning curve there seems just a little too steep. But with the MDMX you get a similar idea, but designed in a more accessible way, which anyone can get their head around. Overall, I'm definitely happy to recommend the MDMX. It is a unique product which won't appeal to everyone, but if you're intrigued by the thought of building a mixer which is tailored to your exact requirements, I think you'll be very happy with the way that the company have executed it here. In the comments, let me know what you think of the MDMX, and of course, I'd love to hear from anyone who backed it during that initial crowdfunding phase and what your experience was like. And what do you think about the idea of modular DJ kits in general? Is it something all companies should be striving for, or do you prefer a more turnkey solution? Thanks for watching this episode of Beatsource Tech. I do hope you've enjoyed it or found it useful. If you have, please give the video a thumbs up And make sure you're subscribed to the channel and you've turned on notifications so you don't miss any future videos. I'll see you next time!